Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with my co-host, who famously said, "They call me the king. It feels good." In 1982's Dreams Don't Die, Ike Eisenmann.
Yes, I guess I did indeed say that. I didn't write it, but I said it.
I got to watch a little bit of it this weekend. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it's available on, you can actually get it on DVD through Amazon. And I don't know who put it out or anything like that, but I did buy it. But yeah, I think you can watch it on YouTube. That was a fun show to do for me. Really fun, actually.
It has a lot of people who love that show. And I didn't know this before I searched it up. I had not seen that movie. And it has a lot of people who love it. There's very people who are fond of it. It's like a big cult classic. I don't know if you know that.
I know, actually, I don't. I didn't know that. I haven't caught on to that yet in any particular way. It was, very briefly, it was an interesting movie of the week. It was a movie of the week on ABC, I believe. And my claim to fame there is I beat out Emilio Estevez for the part.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Well, you have a lot of these
he auditioned also, and they ended up picking me. Not exactly sure why, but anyway, I was glad to do it. But it was based loosely on like two true stories, because it's about a graffiti artist in New York City who really wants to be a real artist, but he's a graffiti artist, and he's all conflicted about that and how to get into the real, the world of things of art, and doesn't think he can. And Paul Winfield, who plays a police officer, ends up arresting him for tagging subway trains, then kind of becomes his mentor and helps him through his process. But at the same time, there's a side running story about, and this was based on, I don't know if it was New York City or Chicago, but an actual group of drug dealers who only hired children under the age of 16, I think it was. Oh, wow. 16 years old, because you couldn't prosecute a child for having drugs, dealing drugs, peddling drugs, and selling drugs. And so this whole ring of gangsters, if you will, put together this for a period of time highly successful drug ring. And it could have been New York City, because that's basically where this story took place. And they the writers and producers utilized that story at the same time. And both of our world, between myself, this young drug dealer or maybe it was 18 years old, I don't know, who's making a lot of money and vacating the law because of his age, is trying to draw my girlfriend in the story into that world, and she's scared of it, and we're all trying to get this guy arrested. So this whole storyline unfolds where we end up being a part of the process of getting him busted and faking out him turning 18 years old. So it's a whole convoluted thing, but it's actually fun. It's got a lot of fun stuff in it, and some great people.
Had a ton of comments on it that people like, "Oh my God, I love this show. I love this movie," and that they remember when it came out on TV. And I had just moved back to the country there, so I don't remember it. But we have to talk about that one a different day, because I'd like to hear all about this one. But today we have a very special one, because we've kind of been putting this off a little bit. We're talking about, we said, let's do a few other things first, and before we do this. So today we get to finally talk about all the Witch Mountain movies. So it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and I've told you this many times. It was one of the few that I actually remember going to see in the theater. And now when we spoke about it, you agreed that there was a good way to kick off the new year. So here we go, finally.
Well, this should be fun. I truly do love talking about the films, because I'm very, very blessed to have very specific full memories of pretty much the entire experience. And that also, applies to my entire career and a lot of my childhood. And I feel very fortunate about that because, it's my bottom line is Escape to Witch Mountain is my favorite project I have ever done. And it will always remain that way because it was so impactful to me. It was a huge step forward in my career. It was a huge casting opportunity for me because, one of the things, and I talk about this frequently, and I especially outline it in my memoir about what a big deal Disney was to me as a kid. Because I grew up watching Disney movies. My grandmother took me to Disney movies. Every time one came out at our local theater, she took me to go see it. And one of my favorite stories about that, I must have been 4 or 5 years old and went and saw Bambi, and I couldn't make it through it. I broke down, I freaked out, I panicked, and my grandmother had to take me home because I couldn't handle the tragedy in it. And I have never actually seen the entire film of Bambi because of that experience. Okay. Yeah, which I plan on sitting down and watching sometime in the near future, just because I need to do it. It's such a beautiful animated film. But anyway, so I had such a huge exposure to Disney, and the wonderful world of Disney was a big part of our family's life as well as mine. And it was one of my dreams as a child actor to work for Disney, period, in any way at all. And I once I understood, once I got into the business, that Disney was a studio, and of course I knew they made movies, but then I realized as I was auditioning for other things that, my gosh, one day I might get to audition for something at Disney. And the idea of it just overwhelmed me. And then when I finally got my first audition there, I just thought, oh God, this is so fantastic. This is so great. This is so great. This is so great. And I didn't get it. And
which one was this that you didn't get?
I have no idea, because that was an interesting thing about Disney and Disney casting. And I don't know if they just did it with children or not, but they never told us what it was for. We just went in, and I never knew what projects I was
just went in blind, and we're auditioning for something, and you don't know. No clue.
Yeah, they would just say, here's the scene. Wow. We just want to see how you do as a character description. And one of the other things that's was unique about Disney casting is they had a completely separate children's department. Virginia Higgins was the head of casting for children, and now his name's escaping me. There was another gentleman who cast all the adults and read all the adults, and they had offices like opposite each other in a short hallway outside. It was the casting building, situated right out front of the studio, right by the gate. Was there forever. Now I think it's completely gone, but I couldn't believe that I didn't get a call back, and I was just kind of devastated by that. And I thought, well, okay, we'll see, because at that point I'd gotten a little cocky in my career. I pretty much got everything I read for, or that I wanted to get, or at least I got a call back for it. If I got a call back, didn't get it, that was fine. But to not even get a call back, I thought, God, this is just crazy. And so they kept bringing me back. Virginia kept bringing me back. I always read for her. That was just the way it worked. You read for her. And over and over and over again, she kept telling me how much she liked me, and then would send me off. And I was getting more and more depressed until one day, and quite literally, I remember, because I kept track of every audition I had at Disney. My 11th audition at the studio was when I was 11 years old. And I thought that was some kind of sign. I go in and I read for what turned out to be Escape to Witch Mountain. And at the time I had no idea. And then I read for it and thought, man, look, at this point I was jaded, so I walked away and just said, gotta let go of it. And a few days later, my agent called me up and said Disney wanted to screen test me for the film. And then that was set up, and I ended up screen testing with Kim Richards and on the lot at Disney. So that was my first taste of the studio, was the screen test. And then it just unfolded from there. Did you screen test with any other actresses too as well, or no, just Kim? No, it was just Kim and I. And And I have my little list here in front of me because in doing the research actually for
Which
writing
I was
my
going to ask
book.
about.
Yeah, I was just gonna just jump right into it. Dave Smith, who became the head of the archives at the studios, became a friend of mine years later. And when I told him I was writing my memoir, he offered to get me any information he could find at the studio about the making of the Witch Mountain films. And I said, oh my God, that would be great, because I'm trying to piece together, my memories with the actual chronology of how things worked and all that stuff. He ended up sending me a document that is literally barely half a page. It has almost no information on it because they didn't keep anything. And it broke down when principal photography started, and it had a list of who screen tested for the film. And Kim and I were the first ones that screen tested. And the names were, and I don't know how they were paired up, but for the part of Tony, Willie Ames screen tested, Radamus Parra, who was in Kung Fu and Little House on the Prairie, and Leif Garrett actually was one of the other
That's
boys
amazing.
that the screen tested for Tony. And then for Tia, Melissa Sue Anderson from Little House screen tested, a young actress named Vicky Schreck, who I don't know, Kristen McNichols, and another actress I don't know, Rosanna Locasano, I believe is how her name
So the
is
two you beat out
pronounced.
some really impressive names, kind of.
Well, it's so funny because you say generally speaking, we say beat out.
Well, okay.
But no, I know we used to use that. Look, I use that term all the time, in the business, because it is competitive. Let's be honest. But just sometimes the right chemistry just comes together for for these things. At least I thought it was the right chemistry. And I think the success of the movie has probably borne that idea out. But I've tried to imagine what the film would have felt like with Melissa Sue Anderson and Willie Ames, because they're a little, I don't know if they're a little older or not. They might be a couple of years older than Kim and I were, because even in the book, the two characters were teenagers. They weren't as young as Disney.
I'm gonna have to look up how old Willie Ames is. Yes.
Yeah, they were. The original concept for the characters was definitely older than what Disney ended up recreating for the movie. And I really, I liked, as much as I was fascinated by the book, I thought yet again it would have been a completely other type of story had the brother and sister been mid-teens or so. It takes,
he's a few years older than you.
Yeah. So they were, I guess they were looked at as more the not appropriate age, but the original age of the characters. And then Kim and I were a lot younger. I was 11 years old, she was only 9 years old, so we were pretty young by comparison.
Now you've told the story. Now I just want to know, you can always edit all this stuff out that whenever I ask. But so you have a great Melissa Sue Anderson story where she got annoyed with you later on when you were guested on Little House.
Well, yeah, at the time when I screen tested, I had no idea that other people were screen testing. I mean, I'm sure I was told that. I probably was informed. I didn't see anybody else, because I only met Kim when I went in for the screen test. And then, of course, when we were done, we went home, and probably the next group came in. So they didn't cross us over in any way. That was something that I really, and I'll get to that story in a second. But so one of the things I admired about Virginia Higgins, she was an amazing woman who knew how to work with children and professional children, both professional and unprofessional, because, we're a unique little strange group. Some of us are very savvy and we're very together. And then some of us are very, scattered and all over the place. And you really do have to, I always like being treated like an adult, because I felt like a young adult, and I liked that. But you've got to be cognizant of the fact that you're dealing with children in a high pressure professional environment. And I always liked the way Disney did it, because they didn't do group casting sessions. They didn't have a small group of kids like with other shows that I auditioned for. You'd have a whole group of kids in the room, and then they bring one or two in at a time, and then send you out, then bring another two in, and then repair you up with someone else and take you in again. And you're sitting there just freaking out because you're you don't know who you're in competition with or who you're actually being set up with or whatever. And Disney never did anything like that. So my point being, I didn't encounter on that day anyone else who screen tested. So I ended up years later getting an opportunity to do an episode of Little House. And I was so excited because I love Little House on the Prairie. I couldn't wait to be on the set. I'd heard such great things about the set and the whole cast and everybody. And so I walk on and on my first day, and it's just a madhouse. I mean, it was a huge scene being shot. The entire cast was there, the crew's working around trying to get ready for the day's shooting. And an assistant director who, corralled me, was my handler at the moment, getting me, integrated into the new experience, took me over to the makeup station. And he said, everybody, this is Ike Eisenmann. He's playing, and I can't remember, my character's name was Russian. Allison Arngrim can repeat these things all the time. I can't remember them. But anyway, this is Ike Eisenmann. He's playing this character, and we just wanted to introduce him to you. And Melissa Gilbert turned around and she said, "Oh, hi, Ike. I'm Melissa. Nice to meet you." And Matthew Laberto was at the table. He turned around and said, "Hi, I'm Matthew." And then all of a sudden at the far end was obviously Melissa Sue Anderson. I only recognized her because of her long hair. Her hair lady was brushing out her long hair. And it was unbelievable because she literally was facing this way and then did one of these and said, "Oh, aren't you that kid who was in that Witch Mountain movie?" And I said, "Yeah, actually." And I thought that was kind of nice to be recognized by Melissa Sue Anderson. And she said, "Well, Willie Ames and I were supposed to do that movie, but we had previous commitments, so we turned it down." And then she turned right back around into the mirror and just and that was it. That was the it was just cold slap in the face. And I thought it was so weird because I thought, okay, yeah, so we did the movie, but you're starring on one of the major hit series of all time. And yet you've got obviously some, I don't know, envy problem or something like that
I have to tell you, no matter how many times I hear that story, I love that story.
Well, it was shocking and intimidating to me at the time. Of course, now that time has gone by and I kind of get these dynamics better, I think it's hilarious. And little did I know that was very, symptomatic of Melissa Sue Anderson's personality. She could be difficult and awkward and a bit strange at times. And I've heard that and I've read it. I'm not speaking out of turn here, but that was my experience with her being a brand new guest star on the show. And I thought, man, you treat all your guest stars this way, it's not going to be a fun shoot. So I managed to avoid her for.
I love the cattiness of it.
It was just, but yeah, but I mean, it's like you look at the adult stars who have that kind of catty attitude, right, and you think, where did that come from? And you realize, oh, they've always had it. They didn't develop it. They've always had it. They're just now being rewarded for it for some reason. So yeah.
Now, I just want to go back one thing. You said, because they never told you which movies that you auditioned for, you're saying, but was there ever that you watched the movie and you said, "Oh, I remember reading this dialogue for something in a Disney movie"?
I don't know. Oh no, not at all. Not at all. I would not have any kind of recollection of that. As good as my memory was, it wasn't quite that good. But yeah, I mean, and I never know, casting children, sometimes casting anyone, sometimes they won't even use the actual material from, the film or project that they're doing. They'll just use pieces like stacks of dialogue that's okay, this is a 10-year-old boy, likable boy, just let's give him this dialogue just to see what they can do. But I think my own analysis over time of it was I think Virginia was waiting for me to be ready for the right part. I don't think she wanted to put me in a 5 and under or a walk on or, some small scene in a film. And that's, it could be ego. It could just be my personal sense of pride about my overall experience with Disney and what I ended up then getting cast in. But it and those 11 auditions were over a short period of time, like a year and a half. It wasn't very long. And over that year and a half, I did more TV shows. I started out having done just a couple things, and I did a few more. And then by the time the most recent thing I had been in before auditioning for Escape to Witch Mountain was a rather, not controversial, but it was a very powerful at the time ABC after school special called My Dad Lives in a Downtown Hotel. And I starred in it alongside Beau Bridges, who played my father. And at the time, and I'm trying to think what year this would have been 74, I think, 1974, divorce was becoming a national kind of epidemic. It was in the news. And
remember that. I do remember.
There was a lot of attention being paid on things like, the stresses. Excuse me, gosh darn it, my club soda always haunts me, and I barely started the show.
You just edit that out.
Yeah. Well, it shows I'm human. But anyway, there was a lot of attention being paid on the stresses it was, creating for children who were confused about this whole idea. And so that was what the movie, the after school special, was about. And I think that was a feather in my cap that ended up pushing me more towards being castable in a starring role. All those things help.
Well, I want to put you in a hot seat right now. And we have a lot of Witch Mountain questions. I don't know why I'm doing this, but just something that you said right now was that you've been very gracious. Whenever we've spoken, you've been very gracious about when you didn't get parts, and you commended the actors that got the parts instead of you. I mean, you've been really nice. You're a very down-to-earth person. Has there ever been a role that you saw that said, well, I could have done better than that? That's something that you auditioned for?
Oh gosh. Okay.
That you care to admit to.
That's a really good question, because I got to do all the juicy ones that I wanted, and I'm trying to think.
Because every time we talk about a role that you said, oh, but they were great in this, you always do that. Was there ever something that you just said, no, I could have nailed that?
My gosh, I'm trying to think, because I appreciate you saying that I'm gracious about it, but I guess I've been, I've just always been objective about it. See, the business is really hard because you take it very personally. They talk about, including myself, show business for actors in general, not just children, but everyone is a process of 98% rejection and 2% acceptance, because you audition constantly and you're constantly rejected. And you have to learn very early on.
I know that feeling well.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, anything artistic. I'm not. Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It applies to anything that's artistic, because you're doing something that's meaningful to you. You're putting out in front of the world. You're hoping they are interested in it or accepting it. And because everything is a business at the end of the day, everything is looked at through that lens. And you have to start to understand that you're part of a business, even as a child, because if you don't, it will simply eat you up. And that was the advice I got from everyone. I mean, my father included, who was a difficult kind of role model to have in my life, because he was a very angry, frustrated actor who thought he should be a bigger star than he was. And I never really wanted to be a star, and it ended up kind of happening to me. But to your question, I'm trying to think. I can't really think of anything that I would have felt like I could have done better, because even though I went in with the same level of passion I had for other things that I ended up getting, I simply wasn't right for them. And you can't I do think about roles that, had I gotten, would have changed my career forever. And I think the one that was probably the most difficult for me to look back on is Ordinary People, because I was very much in the running for Ordinary People. And I had several auditions with Robert Redford, and he seemed to like what I was, the sensibility I had that I was bringing to this character. But there's just no way. Timothy Hutton, I mean, what an Academy Award. He was the right person at the right time for a monumental role like that. And of course, it launched his career in a direction that, mine potentially could have gone. But, it's like, that's why I guess I come across as gracious, because I just see it realistically. And I just don't take it personally. I really don't. So I don't know that I know for a fact that I could not have nailed that part like Timothy Hutton did. I couldn't. And so therefore the right person got the job. It was like to get close with something that large and not get it was probably more difficult to deal with than thinking, oh, I could have done a better job, which I don't think I could have once I saw the entire film and how it all worked out. So yeah, it's okay. Put me on the spot. I'm going to think about that though. I might have an answer for you.
So I'll grill you again about this at a different time then. So,
okay.
So I tried it. For whoever's watching, I did try. Okay. I just want you to know. So let's start at the beginning. You just mentioned you grew up in Texas and your father actually had a TV show, his own show. So what was that show like? A little bit of what that show was.
Well, it was a live television show, children's show on a local Houston, Texas affiliate network. And it was really kind of crazy because he started back in the 50s. It was called the Cadet Don Show. It was kind of a space themed, astronaut styled children's show that played cartoons, and he had different segments on the show. He would have guests on the show, sometimes actors, sometimes a lot of people from actually NASA, because one of the reasons why they did the show was Mission Control was just being built in Houston, Texas. This was a new thing, and there was a huge marketing plan in place to make people aware of it. And my father's show kind of fell into that because they wanted, it was KTRK was the call letters for the station, and the owner of the station wanted to work with NASA and kind of do something space themed. And my father got this opportunity to, create this character called Cadet Don. And my father ran with it. And he was on the air 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week, live. I mean, this was live television. And so he was constantly having to fill it with whatever content he could. And he did exercise things, teaching kids about exercise and dental hygiene. And
that's a lot of content.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable how much it is when I think back on it. And he did that show for 9 years. As a matter of fact, there's a, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of Randy Quaid and Dennis Quaid are both from Houston, Texas. They both grew up watching my father on his show. And my father ended up, okay, we're bouncing all over the place, but he ended up moving into production after he'd given his acting career the best shot that he could. He became a prop master, and a very successful prop master, and he was working on a show, TV series with Randy Quaid. And Randy talked to him about the Cadet Don show. And he said, my God, you're Cadet Don. I can't believe it. And a lot of people from Houston remember the show because it was hugely popular. And my father had this special thing that he ended up doing, I think, pretty much every day once he started this little gimmick, where he would have the birthday segment where he would come in after the commercial and he'd say, okay, Sally, happy birthday to you. I know it's your 5th birthday. And if you go into your parents' closet, you're going to find your present, your birthday present there for you. He did it one day just, anonymously. He had no idea who was going, it was not to anyone specific, got flooded with letters and over the next 2 days. And then his people started going through the letters and finding real birthdays that were being announced. Wow. He would announce them on the show. And so these kids are at home watching the Cadet Don show, and they all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, that's me. It's my birthday. And then they run off wherever the birthday present's hidden, pull it out. And it just like the show just went through the roof at that point. So anyway, this leading back to the Quaids, one day my father is on the set with Randy, and Randy says, come here, Al, you got to come up here. I need you to meet somebody. So he takes my father up into the production booth, and sitting there is Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, Dennis looks up and he goes, "Oh my God, Cadet Don. I don't believe it. I'm meeting Cadet Don." He says, "I just have to say this to you because this means everything to me. I found my birthday present." So Dennis Quaid got actually called out specifically on my father's show for his birthday, and he found his present, and he'd waited like all these decades to have an opportunity to actually say something to the real Cadet Don, and he got his chance. So
Wow.
this show was really, really impactful on a lot of people. And my father, he wanted to start to syndicate it. He was trying to do a deal with a station owner to syndicate it further around Texas and maybe wider, in the country than that. And it ended up not working out. And he got very frustrated and decided, my father wanted to advance his career. He wanted to move on to bigger and hopefully better things. So he decided to quit the show and move our entire family from Houston, Texas to Los Angeles.
So I was going to ask you, so that had to do with him. That was just, he made that decision that he wanted to pursue acting further.
Yeah, strictly him. And I was 6 years old at the time when it happened, so it was a bit of a jarring shock to myself and my brother. But it happened very quickly, and before I knew it, we were in the station wagon, all driving out to Los Angeles, and he immediately started working and doing a number of things. I mean, my father could sing. He couldn't really dance per se, but he was a reasonably talented singer. So he was doing musical theater, started doing commercials, and after a while, I mean, it was a few years that he got himself established there. But one day, and I mean, and unbeknownst to my family, I started to harbor this real desire to be a part of, movies and TV shows, because I was on my father's show.
That's what I was going to ask. So that started you making appearances on the Cadet Don show?
Yeah. Every year on my brother and I both, on our birthdays, starting when I was 2 years old, we would be on the show. So it would be, my birthday, and it would be a birthday party on the show, and presents would come out and the whole 9 yards. And
so that gave you the bug.
Oh, it did. I mean, it did from moment one, because even at 2 years old, I looked around and I thought, it's a very surreal experience, but it was my normal life to every single day watch my father on TV, on the box in the living room. That's, my father was there. Then the box would turn off, and a couple hours later, my dad would come in the front door. So it was like he was in the box, and then magically he would come from wherever it was he was. And I didn't have obviously a concept of that until I went on the show. And then I went on the show and went to the station and went onto the set and saw the cameras and the microphones and all the people and all the lights and the set itself, and it's so funny because it's so true. Every time you see a set on in the movies or in a TV show, and then you actually go on the set, it's bizarre how fake they look and how small they are. And they look like they're, scotch taped together and all of that. And it's very true. And I thought, even that at that young an age, it just impacted me in a huge way. And I thought, man, I want to be a part of something like this. But I never really said anything about it. So then all of a sudden one day, I was 9 years old. My dad sat me down and said, "Look, your mother and I have been talking, and we wanted to see if you might be interested in doing commercials." Because every showbiz family in Los Angeles, their kids did commercials. And the running thing was, yeah, you can earn money for college. Even though these were all highly successful people who should have been paying for their own children's college funds. They were making their kids work so they could pay for their own college education. So for some reason that allowed everyone to justify, making your child, or, having your child go to work. So I thought, okay, sure. I mean, hilariously, I thought, I don't even know what college is or when that happens, but if it's going to cost money and I can earn my own money, why not? But no, I was very excited, very, very, very excited about this opportunity now to be a part of the business. And so that's how it started. I got an agent, started auditioning, and started booking things very quickly.
I'm gonna have to reach out to Dennis Quaid to see if we can get him on the show to talk about it.
I think that would be awesome.
By the way, when you first started telling me that he told kids to go to their parents' closet. I was expecting a totally different type of story.
But it's like one of those things about live TV. You can be so clever with that, and you really can't do anything like that anymore. Everything's too huge. You couldn't. Yeah.
So after how long did you get your own agent?
Oh, it was immediate. I went and met my father. The way the business works, and today it might be a little bit different, but there were agencies that were strictly booked actors for commercial auditions. That was it. Then you had a theatrical agent that would book you for TV shows and movies.
So it's two different people.
Completely two different agencies,
wow.
Not just people, agencies. Because Herb Tannen, which was my commercial agent for a very long time, they had a children's department. Then they had like 3 or 4 agents that handled all the adults. So it was a big bustling office with a lot going on, actors in and out all the time. And all these agencies would have their children's department, which consisted of 1, 2, or 3 other agents as well. So yeah, they're completely separate entities.
That's amazing to me. I really had no clue about. I thought it was just like one person took care of everything for you.
Well, no, because everyone has their specialty, their relationships. There's the commercial casting directors, and that's all they do. They don't cast TV shows, they just cast commercials. And the ad agencies. I mean, Mad Men is probably one of the best shows you can watch to experience what that evolution was like in advertising, when it moved from simply print and having your picture taken and put into a print ad, until television commercials became a thing, and advertising agencies became the driving force in creating the commercial industry on television, period. So then they would hire the casting people and the production companies and dictate what they wanted to sell, the product they represented, et cetera, and the people they wanted to represent that product. So it's always been commercially, so it sounds so funny, but commercially driven, where film and TV is a little bit more obviously theatrical and artistic and has a whole different sensibility.
So at this time, while you're doing this, you're getting commercials. You get there, you start landing some commercials, and you're aware at this time that you're already thinking you have an obsession that you have to be in something Disney related.
Yeah, absolutely. Because not too long. I mean, I did a lot of commercials initially. That was primarily what I did, and I wanted to do TV shows. And before I knew it, there we go, Club Soda again. My commercial agent, who's one of the loves of my life, Collie Vidal is her name, and she really believed in me. She thought I could do a whole lot more than I was doing in commercials, and she had a relationship, I think, with the casting director from Gunsmoke, and she somehow heard about, I don't know if it came to the agency or she just heard about it, that they were looking for a character child my age, and there was an open casting call for it. So she ended up getting me an audition, and that was not her specialty. She strictly dealt with commercials, but somehow she called them up, said, "You need to see this kid." And I went in and I got it. And it was a super fun episode of Gunsmoke called $11. And I worked very closely with Ken Curtis, who played Festus on the show. But that was the first, they call it theatrical part I got. And once I got that, then she then facilitated my theatrical career by getting me auditions for other TV shows, until she finally had to say, "I can't do this. You need an actual theatrical agent. You need to find someone else, because I'm taking time away from my commercial clients to concentrate on this. You're going to be fine." And I was almost a little hurt, because I loved her so much. She's such a great, she was just a great lady. And I had so many good experiences with the people I worked with, that worked for me, et cetera, in the business. They all were so invested in the passion of what they did. And she was one of them, and she was right. I needed to have a theatrical agent. So that's how that then started to unfold. And then I realized, of course, going onto a studio lot, commercials are different. You work on sound stages, and in studios, but it's it's a 1 day thing. You're in, you're out. It's a very high pressure. Commercials are super high pressure acting jobs, and not that other ones aren't, but the second I did that Gunsmoke, and I thought, oh no, I really like this. I like this a whole lot better, because it was like 5 days of work. I got to know people. I was at the CBS Radford lot where they had all their standing Gunsmoke sets, and the sound stage was there with the main street, whatever the town was called in Gunsmoke. It was just like, okay, this is beyond magical. And so my imagination is now moving over to Disney and how magical that must be. And I just thought, no, I have to. I just have something has to happen. Just has to happen.
Well, let's talk about Witch Mountain then. When did you first start hearing about the project?
I'm sorry, in what sense do you mean?
Like that they were going to be making a movie of this, that you were, because you said you didn't know that what you were auditioning for. Did you know that you were auditioning for this particular project?
No, I didn't. And even though my father read the trades religiously, which is, Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, that's where most people learn about the productions that are going on in town. It wasn't anything that we were necessarily aware of. So I don't know even back then if Disney even put those things out into the trades until they were cast and moving forward in that way. So I had no idea what it was. I didn't even know it was a movie, because they have their TV shows for the Wonderful World of Disney.
Right.
Then they had their movies that they cast. So I just never knew. I never knew what it was.
So when did you find out that this was for?
Once I did the screen test.
That was the first time that you ever knew anything about this?
That was it. And Kim and I were cast very quickly after the screen test, because I'd have to look at the schedule.
It's amazing.
Let me check the schedule here, because we were on April 5th. Yeah, I mean, the first day of shooting, according to this, was April 18th, and I'm going to go with that because I don't remember exactly.
Did you meet any of the other, like the adult actors during the audition process, or no?
No,
or just Kim?
No one. No, just Kim, and John Huff, the director, was there to audition us. That's when I knew this was a big deal. I mean, I didn't quite understand what a screen test was, because it was common practice in Hollywood, obviously, but what I knew was it was a bigger deal than a callback, because we were at the studio, we were being put on film, and the director was there to talk to us and kind of guide us through what he wanted us to do, which was not much. He just said, just be yourselves. That's all he ever said. And that's exactly what we did. So no, until I saw, until he sort of outlined, he said, I'm directing this movie, here's what it's about. And he gave us some background. So all of a sudden we knew what these dialogue exchanges were about between this brother and sister. It all of a sudden started to like mushroom in my head. And I thought, holy cow, wow, this is amazing. And then, it was only a matter of days later that
you were auditioning with Kim. Did you recognize her from, because she's already been on a regular?
100%. I had seen her on Annie the Professor. I consumed all the television that I could at that time. And when I get introduced to her, I mean, the thing that just hit me immediately was I looked at her and said, holy cow, it's the Nanny Professor girl. And she could totally be my sister. I mean, we looked so much alike, and I could even see that in the moment. So, that was something. And even, look at the picture behind you. It's freaky to me.
It is. It's
freaky as
day. Very similar, similar appearance. Yeah. So when did you find out that you got the part? What was your reaction? I mean,
it was a few days later, and I almost like had an out-of-body experience. I thought, oh my gosh, not only did I get something Disney, but I got, a co-starring role in a Disney movie. And I just thought, this is it. I mean, this is my dream. I'm going to be able to work. They broke it all down immediately. They let us know what the production schedule was. They sent the script to the house. I read it as soon as I possibly could. I knew it was, then learned it was based on a book. So I went out and bought the book, and I mean, I was overwhelmed, and I was completely committed to this entire idea, and just beyond excited. It's very hard to describe. It's very hard to describe because it's, not many children, you might get your dream present, when you're 11 years old, of or an actual race car or something like that. But it just doesn't compare to having so much desire and having built this I mean, I spent so much time visualizing myself in a Disney project. I mean, every Sunday night watching The Wonderful World of Disney, and there would be a kid in it, I think, gosh, man, that could be me. I wish it was me. I would just God, it would be so great if I could get a chance to do something
sweet.
like that for them. And so, and then here I was. And yeah, so I just, as I often say, I was in the boat heading down the river, full steam ahead. I was into it. So much so that when I learned that Tony played the harmonica for to implement his telekinetic powers, I panicked because I thought no one ever asked me if I could play the harmonica. And I thought, man, I'm probably gonna have to learn how to play the harmonica. So I told my mom, I have to buy one. I have to learn how to play. And she took me to a novelty shop in Hollywood, and I picked out this harmonica and took it back home and started trying to learn how to play, because I just knew one day I was on the set, I was going to be asked to play, and I was going to be stuck and have to tell John Huff, the director, I don't know how to play. So yeah, I was that serious about it.
So you get on the set, and let's go through some of these names. I mean, you have Eddie Albert, Donald Pleasance, Denver Pyle, Ray Milland, Rita Shaw, who had been in many other things, including Mary Poppins. And, were you aware of their histories? I mean, did that make an impression on you at all?
Well, yeah, Rita Shaw, especially because we worked with her on her very first day. It's like, we shot the film in as much script order as possible. Even though initially we were on location and all the interior stuff was shot at the studio later on. But that first day, the opening shots of the film, Kim and I in the van pulling up to the orphanage and getting out and having our scene with Rita Shaw, and the scene inside with her and Truck, and all that happened on the first day. And that's who she was. I mean, she epitomized Disney to me. I mean, she was in so many Disney projects that she was very much a part of that image. And it just, everything I kept encountering as I started to work on the film just reaffirmed that I'm working on a Disney project. It was very overwhelming. And yes, I knew Eddie Albert from Green Acres. Of course, I grew up watching Green Acres. I knew Ray Milland from the movies I watched on Saturday afternoons. I knew who he was. I knew who Donald Pleasance was from the movies I'd seen. And it was just like, all of a sudden, these people that had entertained me and decorated my world through the television and through the movie screen were suddenly, now I'm like working with them. And
it's gonna be so surreal. That, I mean, not intimidated?
It's no, you know what? I don't know why. I was never intimidated by anybody. Because I mean, first of all, I started working with major people even in commercials. I mean, commercials had actors who were incredible performers and people I was familiar with, even through their commercial work. So I got used to working with professional actors, even if they were well known, very quickly. Like on Gunsmoke, Ken Curtis, I watched him every week, for years. And I think the thing that often I was the most interested in was how much they were actually like their characters and how much they weren't like their characters. And Ken Curtis was absolutely, he talked that way. He wore his spurs everywhere. You heard him coming from a distance because you hear clang, clang, clang. Oh, Ken's on his way to the set. So it was, those kinds of things had been a part of my professional life. Even Beau Bridges, I had seen him and I forgot what famous film he had done at the time. I forget the name of it, but I'd seen him in movies. And you get when you're an actor and you don't just stand there and look at somebody, like somebody perhaps who's a fan or is having an encounter with someone for a brief period of time. It's kind of hard to get that surreal sense that you're looking at this person, you see him up on the screen and you're interacting with them. But you just very quickly get into I get very quickly into the professional mode of who I'm working with. And, I get over all of that very quickly. And of course they do their part. They know they're movie stars. They know they're well known. And it always impressed me how much they wanted to make me feel welcome and comfortable, in breaking the ice and all that very, very fast.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you a little bit of a rundown. Were they all very welcoming to you? I mean, very like, nice and, like, I know this is a kid. I know, no ego, like, let's say.
Oh, completely. The only person that threw me was Eddie Albert, because when we were first introduced to him, he was extremely gruff and he was very off-putting and he was not very welcoming. He didn't talk to us. He didn't want to deal with us. He did his own thing. And I thought, wow, okay. I don't know. It was kind of my first time running into something where there was a little bit of a wall there, but I started to realize as we continued to work, he was just a method actor. He was playing the curmudgeon that hated the kids, that didn't want anything to do with the kids. So that's how he treated us. And as his character warmed up to us over the course of shooting, he warmed up to us in the same way. And actually, Eddie and I became quite close, very comfortable together. We did lunches together, and he would, shared a lot of stories with me, and talked to me about it, because he was very much an environmental activist, even way back then. And he wanted to just educate me about things like DDT, that I didn't really know anything about, and all these things that he was involved in. So he wanted to impart that on a younger generation, and it was very impactful for me. So so that ended up being probably one of my closer relationships. When it started out, I was scared to death of him.
I'll say something blasphemous to you, probably. I took theater in college. I never made it professional like you and everything. I don't get all the people that go so heavily into method acting. You're acting. Play the part. You don't have to be this like jerk. And not that Eddie Albert was. I'm saying you don't have to be like this jerk, like a lot of people say off screen. Don't talk to me. I'm in my character. Just call me by my character's name. You're getting paid to act.
And I have to agree with you. As much of a dyed-in-the-wool artist I am, I never quite understood that, because I even watching Eddie do that, and I ended up trying to think other method actors I worked with. They stayed in character the whole time, and I used to think, my gosh, that just sounds so exhausting.
Sure. Yes.
You pour so much energy when the camera's rolling, and the time that you're working, like by the time it stops and I get a break, no, I want to go play cribbage and and have some lemonade. I'm exhausted. So I never quite understood that myself, but that's a lot of very successful actors work that way. So there it is.
Let me ask a little bit about each of the other ones. Donald Pleasance, how was he?
He was actually as lovely as you could possibly imagine, and just as quirky and eccentric as he appears on screen. I mean, that's, I've never worked with one of those I've never really worked with an actor who so immersed themselves in the character that it was different from who they were personally. There's always so much about who you are that you bring to the table. So quite often the weirdos that you see on screen, they're kind of weirdos in real life. But I mean, he was a quirky weirdo in the sweetest, most adorable way you could imagine. I fell in love with him. He adored both Kim and I. He was sweet to both of us. He rehearsed with us a lot, because he liked to rehearse a lot and go over the lines and try different things. And so we would run lines with him a whole lot. And you find everybody's different that way. Ray Milland was so much kinder and softer than his character came across, but he was just as austere and you know, bigger than life, classy. I mean, he really had a movie star quality, that old style studio movie style quality that he brought to the part as well as to the set. He looked like that all the time.
And he'd been in so many, things, so many big things,
Yeah.
throughout his career before this. So yeah.
Yeah.
And this is Rita Shaw's last role. I don't know if you knew that too.
Oh no, gosh, I did not know that. I did
Yeah.
not. Okay, that's very strange. No, I did not know that. But I don't even know. I need to look and see how many Disney projects she was in, because she was just in so much.
Yeah, I was looking through each of their IMDb's, and this was her last role.
Yeah.
I was surprised at that.
That's interesting.
Okay, now I asked you this before, and I just want to go over it because I want this on video. Let's get it on the record. As a kid, I remember being angry, but looking at it again as an adult, seriously, what the hell was up with Mrs. Grinley handing you over to the characters like that? Just
yeah, that I think even I, at my very, very impressionable young age, kind of had a weird problem with that, because I did
like,
learn.
You want the kids? Here you go.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, sure, you got documents, that's fine. I think they tried to smooth that over somehow, that he had all the correct court orders and all of that stuff, but it still seems very strange that there was an entire process that would have happened. That suspension of disbelief is a little nuts. But
I remember even that bothering me as a kid, and it's just looking at it again. I watched the movie again recently, and my kids love the movie now too. But we all like, what the hell's up with that? Just any guy comes in off the street, give me children. All right, here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's actually creepy on so many other levels too that we won't even go into. But they try, the dialogue between Kim and I tries to smooth it over by Kim asking a question. I forgot what the words are necessarily, but do we really have to do this? And I say, that's what these papers mean. It's like, okay, so that makes it okay with us. We have no choice. So I guess we're just gonna jump into a car with this guy and go away somewhere. It is funny.
More importantly, how awesome was it to get to use magic powers in a movie?
Well, but I've
said
this,
that you were.
I've said this in other interviews as well, and I'm happy to repeat it. It was more fun than a kid should be allowed to have, period, especially on a movie set. And I knew when I read the script there was a lot of special effects, and that was something that I really did want to be a part of, because all the Disney movies I loved, from Flubber to Herbie the Love Bug, and the Kurt Russell films, there was always something magical and outrageous about them, and there were all these special effects involved. And not only did I want to see how these things were done, but I couldn't wait to be a part of doing them myself. And to me, that was probably the most fun for me as a performer, as well as a child, as well as just a dreamer, getting to do all the things that I got to do, because they were special. And this is, this is 1970, 74 when we shot it. These were the days of analog effects. Everything was done on set at the time. There's nothing digital. There were photographic effects that we did later, obviously the flying RV and things like that. But everything was practical, by fishing line and wires and tricks and things like that. And as a performer, I had to, as well as Kim, we both had to make something that was completely unreal seem real. And that was just an incredible amount of fun. And even my very first day I did the softball catch. It was the first day on set. I get wired into a harness that I'd been fitted for. I'd never worn it before. And it was like this crazy contraption was, I call them my steel shorts, because there were steel plates wrapped around my hips, sewn into leather with bolts sticking out. I got attached to this crane with this piano wires pulling me in the air. It was supervised by the special effects gentleman who actually created the rig for Julie Andrews, for Mary Poppins. and had been used many times, but he had supervised her and all her work on Mary Poppins, and he was supervising me and what work we did on Witch Mountain. So, the magic just kept getting deeper and deeper for me every time I turned around. The special effects guys were special effects guys that had worked on a bunch of other movies. And they had this box of, like, I called it the magic box, the box of magic tricks. They had every nerdy doodad kind of thing that you could imagine to put things together and make it happen invisibly. It was just incredible.
It's amazing that the very first day that you're shooting the film, you get to fly.
Oh, I know. That it was just, I could hardly get over myself. It was like I kept moving from one cool thing to the next cool thing. And initially they were going to they had a stunt double there to do it for me. And there was a big discussion. Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely wanted to do it, but there was a big discussion because, it's borderline dangerous. I was pulled 14 feet or 12, probably about 12. I've never been able to kind of guesstimate how high, but 12 feet in the air, which means you're coming down from 12 feet in the air. That's never a good thing, for anybody. So the whole process was obviously designed around safety. It was designed around, that's one of the things that Disney was incredible about, was just how safe everything was, no matter what, no matter how small or big. And there was a minor negotiation about it because Irene Burke, who was our teacher and welfare worker on the set, who was there obviously to do our schoolwork that we have to do when we're not shooting, but they call them state welfare workers because that is the position they also assume. They represent the state of California, and they have the legal authority to shut down a production if there's anything dangerous, if a child is put in any kind of danger. They're the ones that steps in and says no, even if the kid may want to do it or doesn't know any better, or the parents don't know any better. They have authority over the parents as well. So they are always on set watching everything that is going on at all times. And when this came up, she was like, okay, I think we need to talk about this, because she looked at the rig. She saw it was a freaking crane that, like, the arm went up 25 feet in the air. Wow. And it's got wires hanging from it, and they got padding back there. But clearly if I came loose at 12 feet, even with the padding, and it wasn't like a big poofy thing. It was like these foam pads that are only about this thick scattered out on the ground. There's going to be some broken bones. So we had to have this whole discussion between my father and Irene and John Huff, the special effects guys, and they all talked, and then everyone turned to me and said, Ike, do you want to do this? And I said, absolutely. I can't think of not doing it. So I have to do this. And I whatever it took to allow me the chance to do it, I was willing to agree to. And so we ended up spending, a couple of hours, practicing and rehearsing and doing it very slowly and building our way up to it. So there was a whole process to it. And my favorite part of the story of that is that the only time we ever actually completed the entire stunt, and I'll call it a stunt because it was complicated. Not only two guys are pulling on a pulley, pulling down as I'm jumping up. So they're lifting me in the air, but I'm jumping with them. So you get to the apex of the jump, and at the apex of the jump, a guy blind on the other side of those hedges is sitting on a ladder with a softball. He's got to throw it to me at just the right time so I can catch it. And we never once completed it in rehearsal. It never worked. He'd throw it this way and I'd spin around, and then they'd lower me slowly back down, and we kept trying to coordinate it and get it all to get sunk up together, and it just wasn't happening. And John was getting nervous, and I was starting to get nervous, and I finally just said to John, can we just go ahead and shoot it, because I think we're rehearsing it too much, and I had the sensibility even at that age to realize, what, under the pressure of a real take, it might all come together. And sure enough, it did. That was the only take that we ever did. It was a one take we shot. We never shot another one. We didn't need to. It was a print because it was successful. And that was the only time I ever caught that softball that day. But man, that was thrilling. That was really thrilling.
You're a professional. You saved it for the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
When you go back and think about the movie now, what comes to mind for you?
Well, everything comes to mind. Every time I see a frame from the film, every time I see a scene from the film, or I sit down to watch the film again, and I've watched it many times, and I've mentioned this before for, working on my memoir. I think one of the things that reinforced all my memories from my childhood and working on the shows I did was because I've seen them so many times. I've seen, my Gunsmoke, I've seen numerous times, and Witch Mountain I've seen numerous times. And every time I see it, I don't see the movie. I see everything that's going on the set, behind the scenes, on the stage. And that's what comes to mind. And the memories come flooding back to me every single time. So I couldn't give you a documented, experiences of every day on the set, but I remember every day on the set.
Mm-hmm.
I have recollections of every day, because every scene, we're in nearly every scene of the film. So every one of those scenes has a story behind it. There's something going on. There's something that was happening, whether Club Soda, whether the scene, went well, or sometimes problems happened or unexpected things happened. When I see them, I see all of that. And I'm very grateful for it.
You have so many great anecdotes. I don't want to take away from the memoir, because you have so many great anecdotes in the memoir itself. No, you do. I mean, just, I love, and I'm always thankful that I got to read it. But there was one with the gorilla, making noise in the mansion with the suitcase. So.
Yeah, that was probably the most bizarre experience I've ever had shooting anything, period. We were working the mansion that served as Aristotle Bolt's mansion is actually an existing structure. It's in Carmel, California, on the famous 16-mile drive. I think that's what it's called, where it's a scenic drive through Carmel, and you see all these massive homes and all, the ocean off to the side, and it's out there. And it was actually a fascinating structure. The story behind that's fascinating in and of itself, because it was built by and I'm forgetting his name, but this very eccentric music composer who actually worked on The Wizard of Oz. He was very successful in the studio days, and he'd worked on the music for The Wizard of Oz, made a ton of money in the business. He and his wife were very, very, very eccentric people, and allowed Disney to come shoot in their home, basically their home. This house was, apparently the stones were cut in Europe. They were shipped out to this location. It was built on site there. At least that was the story that I heard. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But it was like a museum. The inside of this place was like a museum. There was art from all over the world, all kinds of interesting things that just fascinated me. But we didn't get to see very much, because we were roped off from all the rooms that we weren't supposed to be in, and only allowed to be in the rooms that we were shooting in. And we never really met them. We saw the owners kind of floating around here and there. They were dressed very strange. They acted very odd. And the first thing that really showed me that they were quite bizarre was one day during lunch, the lady came out with this big bag of something. And as she came walking out to the front, like quite the front walkway there that you see on the film, she suddenly tears the back open and pours it out. It was like 25 pounds of kibble or something. And as soon as that stuff hit the pavement, swarms of cats came out of everywhere. I mean, every nook and cranny. And I hadn't seen any cats anywhere, which was so strange, because it was like something out of a horror movie. They just appeared running down the mountain, the cliffs, and over the rocks, and at least 50 or 60 cats suddenly gathered around and were all climbing all over each other to eat this stuff up until they ate all the food, and then they all disappeared. And I thought, oh, okay, this is a very interesting couple. Well, we were shooting the dining room scene in the dining room of the castle. They call it the castle, the mansion. And it was a very long scene with Ray Milland and Donald Pleasance and Kim and I. And it was very hot and uncomfortable working conditions, and we knew we were going to be there all day long, and so we were managing it as best we could. But at a certain point, all of a sudden, we heard this thump thump sound, and everybody kind of looked around in the middle of the take. Kim and I are kind of like going, "Oh, what's that? Thump 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 thump." And then they called cut, and we waited a little while, and it stopped, and we tried to shoot again. Then we hear thump 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 thump, and no one can figure out what is going on. So we stopped shooting. We broke for lunch because John said we can't do this because the sound was loud enough that the audio was picking it up, and it was interfering with our dialogue, and it was a really deep, bassy thump sound. So we break for lunch, and one of the assistant directors has to scuttle off and go talk to one of the owners and see if he can find out what it is, and if we can, they could somehow, stop whatever the noise is. And now I never saw any of this. I just heard the stories later. But suddenly the story just ran through the entire crew so quickly that the sound was actually coming from a level below in kind of the bowels of this castle, in a room where these two people kept their pet gorilla. They had a pet gorilla living on the premises, and what he was doing was throwing a car tire against the wall. And he only did that when he was hungry. So he was literally slinging a car tire, boom, boom, against the walls.
Oh my God.
So she went down, fed him. He was happy, and he stopped throwing his car tire around. And I just went, wow. I mean, my goodness,
Welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah. There it is. There it is.
Now, both, I was looking through all the history of it. Both Siskel and Ebert gave it pretty good reviews, but at the time it was a hit, but it wasn't a massive hit. When did that start to change from just like a Disney movie that was a hit to this beloved classic? When did that change start occurring?
Well, I think it probably, it was successful enough for Disney that they clearly wanted to do a sequel, a second Witch Mountain film, Return from Witch Mountain, which we did about 3.
Did they talk about a sequel right away?
No, not at all. I didn't hear about it until until we started seeing it in the trades, actually. And the primary reason we started to see it in the trades was because they'd asked Bette Davis to be in the film, and she agreed. Or either she said she wanted to do a Disney project, and they either created the part for her. Now that I think about it, that could have been a possibility, because she said she had wanted to do something for Disney because she wanted to do something that her grandchildren could see. And so it just, that buzz went everywhere really, really fast, that she was doing this Disney film, and it was going to be a remake of a sequel to Escape to Witch Mountain. And so, then they obviously contacted me around the same time to give me my schedule for, being in it, what the shooting schedule was going to be, and all of that, because I was under contract with Disney by then. So it was another project that was tacked on to my contract. And I think, to me, Witch Mountain wasn't hugely successful, but it did very well. It did very well on a par with a lot of other Disney films from that time, because Disney movies weren't necessarily blockbusters, because they were family films. Family films weren't blockbusters, and so they would do a kind of a guaranteed box office take, and they were very predictable that way. And I think Witch Mountain fell into that, and it fell into it in a nice way, because Escape to Witch Mountain is a very different style movie for Disney. It had all the effects, and it has children in jeopardy, which is a big thing with Disney. But the whole style of it was so kind of dark and very different for them, and it was questionable as to exactly how successful it was going to be. So the success it had initially in its theatrical release, we really celebrated, because it was very, very different from other things. So I think by the time, I thought it was going to have a good, but see, then again, at the time, we didn't know what a good life meant. There was no VHS yet. There was no ancillary media to perpetuate a, to perpetuate any movie title for that matter. So by the time we did Return from Witch Mountain, and I don't even know when, we did a show about it, and I still can't remember what the kind of the date was where the time period when VHS tapes became available for purchase, they became available for rent. But once that started, I certainly knew as an enthusiast that this was going to be a big deal in the industry. And when they chose Escape to Witch Mountain, when VHS came out as one of the 10 first films that Disney was releasing on the new format, I thought, wow, this is a big deal.
Well, that's the question. Did VHS now push this into another level?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because there was, VHS tapes were so expensive because it cost like $80-$85 back in
right.
the beginning. So very few people actually bought them. But then the video rental stores opened up, and it was available everywhere. You could rent it, you could rent it all the time. And so that started, I knew once that happened, I started getting recognized more. It's like I had this period of time where I was being recognized for the film when it was in its theatrical release, obviously, because people were used to, like, all of a sudden they saw the movie and then they saw me and they made the connection. But then when the VHS craze hit, that then increased its exposure, because then people were going back and watching it, and then the DVD releases came out, and that just pushed it again. Because I mean, it's been out on DVD at least, almost half a dozen times. I think four or five times. Not only the first DVD, but then the double DVD, and then a re-edition of the DVD, and then the same thing with Return from Witch Mountain. When Race to Witch Mountain, the remake came out, Disney just kept feeding feeding the market with more versions. But I think personally, what really then took off in a huge way, and this might have started happening before the DVDs came out, the Hallmark Channel licensed the film to play. And I swear to you, it played every single day on the Hallmark Channel for over a year, something like that. A really long time. And I could be not exaggerating, I could be inaccurate about this, but it could have been every weekend, something like that. But all of a sudden, everyone I ran into said, oh my gosh, I just saw Escape to Witch Mountain on the Hallmark Channel. I just saw it on the Hallmark Channel. I just saw it on the Hallmark Channel. And this went on for the longest period of time. And that hit right about when family, the people who grew up with the film were having their own children, and their children were growing up, and all of a sudden it's on television and they're saying, oh, you need to watch this movie. And they were sharing it with their kids. And so it was hitting in second generation, and that just then took off from there. Because I know a lot of people who didn't see it unless their parents had exposed them to it. And then all of a sudden, Disney Plus has, of course, turned it into a whole nother thing again, because now it's on there, hopefully forever.
Well, that's a good thing, because I'm sure it will be. But I went through like the Disney releases, the movies of the 70s, and there were a lot of movies that Disney released at that time that Disney Plus isn't even holding, showing them some of them. And your movie is this beloved classic, and a lot of these others were forgotten, and they all came out at the same, the same few years, within the same age, year range, I guess.
Yeah, but I know, the thing that I hear constantly about people who were really impacted by watching Escape to Witch Mountain, it was such a unique story in that it spoke to children who feel like outsiders, because we were obviously outsiders. We were actual aliens from another planet. We didn't belong here. We truly were outsiders. But that I think the movies back in the 70s that tapped into that, the psyche of that, are still beloved to this day, because it was kind of I feel like it was kind of the first time in Disney movie history that happened. There's movies we love, okay? They're great works of art, the animated ones, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Mary Poppins, and they're incredible entertainment. They make you feel so good and they're so lovely to watch, but they tap into magic. But Witch Mountain tapped into two other levels of magic. I mean, just something that was so part of so many young people's experience, and they suddenly identified with TNI, as being these outsiders who actually had the means to defend themselves in a world bullying them, and how amazing that idea is. And it still chokes me up to this day, because I think about that all the time. I thought it was very, very powerful, probably more powerful than the quality of the movie itself. And I think that got into people's minds, and people carry that around lovingly, and I deeply appreciate it. But I think that's a big part of its success in terms of revisiting it, because it reminds people of those things they went through, and perhaps their children are going through, and that here are these two kids that were able to persevere in a world that was actually out to use them.
I think you hit it on the head. I the very first interaction I had with you, I mentioned that to you, that's how I felt as a kid. So watching it. So yeah, I think that definitely hits and, keeps it in, I guess, the public consciousness about that. People who grew up at that time and they want to show it to their kids. Like, I showed it to my kids, the same thing, So yeah, I guess that totally does it. I was just amazed at how many other movies came out at that time that are probably forgotten now, that Disney released.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing them in the theaters too, but none had this staying power.
Yeah. I'm sure there's so many that I'm completely unaware of, because I didn't get out to see everything that was released. But I'm eternally grateful and incredibly proud to have been a part of that and been partially responsible for it. I mean, Kim and I had such a unique opportunity with such a unique movie, and it really paid off. It really paid off in a very big way, and I'm grateful.
Well, if you don't mind, I just want to touch upon at least a little bit Return from Witch Mountain.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
So, yeah, I just you get back, like you just mentioned, you have Bette Davis and Christopher Lee, and you were with stars in the first movie. Okay, you were with people who were like, bona fide stars, not like Bette Davis. I mean, this is a different stratosphere.
No,
thing. Now, how did that impact you? I mean,
well,
when you go in,
she was a completely different animal altogether. I mean, I will say I was intimidated 100%. She's probably the only performer I've ever had to face where I was absolutely nervous. She already had a reputation as being difficult in Hollywood, and whatever that means, whatever that means, the stories were everywhere. And, people were saying, oh my God, you got to work. That's great. You're working with Bette, but who knows what she's going to be like. And it's like, so many people were kind of warning me and making me feel concerned about that.
I do want to interject one thing with Bette Davis story. If you want to hear a great Bette Davis story, everyone who's watching this, go watch the Brad Savage Pop Culture Retro interview.
Yeah, 100%.
I won't mention it here, but yes.
Yeah, I won't either. That's his story.
Right.
And it is related to Return from Witch Mountain, so you'll enjoy it.
But I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So yeah, I did not know what to think, and of course, by the time I worked on Return from Witch Mountain, I was a few years older and extremely aware of her work. Not that I wasn't aware of anybody else's, but of course, Bette Davis, I'd seen her in so many things, and of course admired her incredibly, and was thrilled at the honor of being on this, being able to work with her in any capacity. But I was as nervous as well. But I tell you, the first time I met her, it was like it all just disappeared. She introduced herself. She says, we're going to be working so much together. I said, I called her Ms. Davis. She says, no, it's Bette. It's Bette. Just don't do that, because, it's going to get so old by the time we're done with this film. So she completely disarmed me immediately. She was hilarious, incredible sense of humor, dry wit. She and Christopher Lee were constantly telling stories and laughing and joking, and they made it so much fun. And I will say, I would sit in awe and look at these two and say, I'm sitting in the backseat of a car with Bette Davis and Christopher Lee, and they're telling old Hollywood stories, and and dirty jokes. They told some off-color jokes in that classy way that only major movie stars can do. But I will say, she kept the crew and on their toes all the time, because she was not going to let anyone off the hook. She was a movie star. She wanted to be treated like a movie star. Although she wasn't a diva in the sense that she was difficult. She was just demanding in ways that I found completely appropriate. She wanted her tea when she wanted her tea. She wanted water when she wanted her water. She wanted an umbrella over her seat sitting out in downtown Los Angeles in the heat of, on a hot day. And it was like, why is this not already here? Come on, I need this. So people were jumping and scrambling all the time, and they were nervous. They were constantly nervous, and she would just wink at me all the time. And
that's awesome. That is great, though.
Just to say, this, she wasn't mean about it, but they would run and scramble to make sure she was taken care of. And I loved that. I loved it. And I could never do it. I could never do anything like that. It just, no matter what stage I was at, even on Fantastic Journey, the series I worked on, when I'm a co-star of the show, right along with Roddy McDowall, I couldn't be demanding about my chair or demanding about this or that. It just always felt wrong, because we're all there to work together. But she'd been around for a long time, and
you get away with it without.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard work, and you sit around a lot, and it gets very boring. And she should have been taken care of. I mean, she's royalty, for goodness sakes. And I like to say that Bette Davis epitomizes what movie stars call movie stars. Movie stars look at Bette Davis and say, no, that's a star. That's what a star is.
100%.
And she carried that aura with her all the time, but she didn't take it seriously. That was the thing. She let me in on her joke, and I just thought, wow, this is privileged. I'm breathing rare air here, because she would nudge me and
You remember any of the gossipy stories that her and Christopher Lee told?
I don't. That's the thing that kills me. I cannot remember any of those stories. And, I was such a busy young person, and I'm going to jump back to the beginning of working on Escape to Witch Mountain for a moment, because I regret I was not a documenter. I didn't write in a diary. I didn't take notes of things. And I kind of wish I certainly wish I had, because there's so much life and history there that is simply lost because I can't remember the stories. But when I flew out to work on Escape to Witch Mountain, my parents gave me a present, and the present was a diary that had Mickey Mouse on the cover and Disney on it, something that they'd bought from Disneyland, in a Mickey Mouse pen. And they said, here, this is just to write down your memories, because they knew this was going to be an important experience. And they suggested I write these things down so that, I would remember them one day and never forget them. And my first day of shooting was so long and so exhausting. And I went back to my hotel room, and I looked at the diary. It was sitting next to my bed. And I thought, well, I need to open it up, and I need to start doing this and write some things down. And I did. I wrote half a page. And as I'm writing in it, I just went, I fell dead asleep in my bed. And I woke up the next morning with it still on my chest. And I thought, there's no way I can do this. It's too much work. So I never became a documentarian in that way, which is sad. But I remember so many things that I think it makes up for it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I enjoyed, I liked Return from Witch Mountain. I enjoyed it. And one thing that I noticed now, and I never realized it as a kid, so it didn't make it to me at all. Escape to Witch Mountain, you and Kim had such great chemistry, which is why the film succeeded and why it's become a classic. Then they keep you apart for the entire next movie.
I know. So, I know. I know. It's I don't know, maybe it made sense. Maybe it made sense that was part of the, the dilemma that, these two siblings that are far more connected than most people because of their alien background, being separated is a devastating thing and a scary thing. Maybe that's, what they were going for. It is interesting. It is interesting, but it also allowed the film to go off in two different directions and bring in the Earthquake Gang and the other kids and the hijinks there. And I often like to say that I feel like Return from Witch Mountain is more of a traditional Disney movie than Escape to Witch Mountain is. It's very lighthearted. There's nothing dark about it. There's nothing terribly treacherous about it. It's just a lot of goofy characters. I mean, even Christopher Lee is so over the top. He every time I watch it, he just cracks me up, and he plays it so well. At the same time, I mean, I just and I love all that about it. I love all the silly stuff with the Earthquake.
It's definitely a different tone.
Yeah, I mean, just completely different. And look, I have people, when I post on social media about Return from Witch Mountain, they will say that that's their favorite one, that they like that one better than the first one, which I find fascinating. And I think that's amazing.
I don't like it better than the first one. I enjoyed it. But like I said, it didn't even strike me as a child. It's only when watching it as an adult, I'm thinking that's odd.
It is. It's very, it is. It's very odd. And I have to agree with you. But somehow it made sense. And it's so funny because Kim and I hardly ever even saw each other, during the shooting.
I believe it.
She and the kids, the other guys were in school. I was working on the set, then I was in school while she was out working, and
you got Bette Davis and Christopher Lee, so
yeah, I got to spend a lot of time with Bette Davis, which is pretty amazing.
So many years go by, and then all of a sudden they say they're going to film a remake in the 90s, and that was universally panned pretty much. I need to go back and see it again because I've not seen it since then. So I really forgot a lot. But what were your thoughts when they released it? Did it annoy you when that came out?
I barely even knew about it. I've never seen it. And we've talked about this. I have never seen it. I feel like I should, just because it's part of my legacy in a way. Nobody liked it. Every time I read about anything, anybody mentions it, it's like, oh God, that horrible attempt at a
I've
remake.
not seen it since then, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it was made for television. And I don't know. It was, probably aired. It was probably made for ABC back when Disney took over ABC or bought ABC. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. But I've only seen images from it, and I just think I have to. I think
you should. I definitely
morbid curiosity. No, I completely agree. And you keep reminding me about it, so now I've got to jot it down somewhere so I put it on my list.
I'm going to have to reach out to the kid that played you to get him on one day. So that played your role. I got to look that movie up and see.
Well, it seems so unfair to say, we just want to talk to you about this horrible remake you were in with the guy who was in the original film. I'm sure he would enjoy that very much.
Maybe we'll edit that part out. So now, again, so later on, you start hearing about they're going to make another feature film about Witch Mountain. They're going to do Race to Witch Mountain. When did you start hearing about that? And did they contact you right away for this?
Race to Witch Mountain was shot in 2008, I believe, because the film was released in 2009. I had heard about Disney wanting to do a remake back in basically 1998. It was 10 years before they actually came up with something that the studio would greenlight. And what I don't know is if because it was Andrew Gunn Films, which is a production company that works that's based on the lot. I don't know if they still are or not, but I know they were back then. I don't know if they were involved the entire time on behalf of Disney to try to come up with something. But I know I first started hearing about it in the trades. Um, I think one of the first people to try to take a stab at the telling of the story was David Nutter, the director, and he was I'm sure that's his name. He was a writer and director on the X-Files. So he was tapped to come up with a story and a script, and it didn't happen. And then someone else was brought in to try their hand at it, and it didn't happen. And I kept hearing every single year, someone else has been attached, someone else has been attached. It's just not happening. They just can't come up with something that the studio is happy with. And it wasn't until the version that finally came into being did I finally then hear something formal about it in any way. And by then I had retired from the business. I'd moved to Florida. I wasn't paying very close attention to the happenings in Hollywood, so I didn't even know that there was actually a remake that had been greenlit at all until I got a random and out of the blue phone call from Andy Fickman, the director. And I got a phone call from him, and he said, "I'm Andy Fickman. I'm directing the reimagining of Escape to Witch Mountain called Race to Witch Mountain. And I'm such a huge fan of Witch Mountain, and I'm so excited to be working on this film. And I would love to know if you would like to be involved in it and play a small part." And I started screaming. I was like so excited. I started screaming, and I just said, absolutely. I would absolutely be so honored to be involved in
Did you know who was involved at this point, or no?
No, I no. But my second question was, is Kim going to be a part of it? And he said, yes, Kim's on board. I said, great. Well, I can't think of anything better. So I'm thrilled. And he kind of described to me how our parts were, how they were envisioning it. The whole film wasn't a reimagining of the original. And so our parts were essentially kind of reimaginings of what our characters would be like. He said, it's the kind of thing where you're there, people who know the original film will know it's you guys, but the part you're playing could go either way. It could be you guys, or it could just be the character you're playing. And I thought, well, I love this. I loved the whole approach, but more so that they, and it was more than a cameo. I mean, it's considered a cameo, but it was just, for both Kim and I, it was a substantial integrated part of the story. And I thought this was one of the best integrations, I think, of characters from an original title being worked into a remake or a reimagining, whatever you want to call it, at all. So I loved it. I loved what they did. I had so much fun doing it. It was ridiculous. But yeah, and he had actually contacted me. It was a few, like within a month of when their shooting was beginning, and they wanted to bring Kim and I in to do our parts, and we were going to spend a week on the set. He said, Dwayne Johnson was playing the Eddie Albert character, and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. Cheech Marin's going to be in it, and all these other people, and I mean, I was already sold, but Andy kept going on and on about how many people wanted to be involved in this movie once they heard it was being made, because they were such huge fans of the original film. And he forewarned me. He said, everyone working on this film is an absolute fan of the first one. So just be prepared. And God, I don't want to get choked up again, because this happens to me every time. But when I went, I was not prepared. I could not have been prepared, because the way our production schedule worked, the sequence that Kim and I were both primarily in, was going to take a week to shoot. It was a long sequence, and very involved with a lot of moving parts. And they wanted to rehearse one day, which was the Saturday. I flew into Los Angeles on a Friday, and then went in for just a walkthrough rehearsal day. We're just going to walk through the scene, kind of block everything out, run through the dialogue, so everyone involved, from the choreographer, because it was, the scene takes place in honky tonk style kind of country western restaurant bar with dancers and live musicians and all this other stuff. He just wanted a day to work at this all out, and for the lighting people to figure out what they wanted to do, and then they were going to shoot it the next week. So I went to the Disney lot, and I hadn't been there in a long time. And it's just like, the Walt Disney Studios is my home away from home. I spent,
Sure.
4 summers of my life there, and I did, a total of 6 projects at that studio over a number of years. And then even in my post on camera acting life, when I was doing voiceover work in ADR, I worked at Disney at least twice a month, 2-3 times a month. And so I was on the lot for 20 more years.
Huh.
On a regular basis. It was just, and I loved it. It's my favorite place in the world to be, except the home I live in now. So getting to walk back on to the lot again after quite a few years of being away from it was overwhelming to begin with. But then I'm, wandering through and looking around and soaking in the memories. And then I walk on to stage 3. Oh, stage 2. I think it's stage 2. So walked on to stage 2. And, everyone's milling about, doing what they're supposed to be doing to kind of get ready for the day. And as I'm walking, all of a sudden I hear someone says, Tony, oh my God, it's Tony. And I went, okay, that's weird. And then I turn around, and it's like, Ike, oh my God, it's Ike. Ike. It like all of a sudden this buzz goes through the space, and everyone stops what they're doing and like
That's so nice.
comes over to shake my hand, to say hi, to say how excited they are, not just to be working on the movie, but so excited to see Kim and I again. And
You're their
had
childhood.
arrived.
Yeah.
I had arrived before Kim did. She came not long after me, but maybe 15-20 minutes after I did. She came walking in, and then it all started all over again, and everyone just went crazy. And Andy Fickman was there. He was there. He sort of like was the master of ceremonies at that point. And and just people were telling stories and how much it meant to them, and how they their kids watch it. And then Andy said, I've got to show you guys the set. We have to walk through the set. And I thought, okay, I'm sure it's a neat set, but I wasn't sure what he was talking about. So he guides us back, and he walks through, and as he's walking through, he points out everything that he and the production team and the producers wanted to have in that set that were references to the original films. I mean, the club was called Ray's, named after Ray Milland. They had a picture of Ott, the horse, who played the original Thunderhead in Escape to Witch Mountain, a picture of him that they had to dig through the archives to find, apparently. And all these little things, and I can't remember all the other ones because I was so overwhelmed by what was going on that I actually had this surreal experience. And I thought, no, we're not actually doing a movie. It's like, this is a setup. This has to be a setup. It's like this ridiculous homage, to us and to the film. And, this can't really be a real thing. And even Dwayne Johnson stopped us and said, you guys are such a huge part of, my life, my kids' life. I don't think his kids were too young at the time, but I wanted to be a part of my kids' life. And, it's part of why I wanted to do this. It was absolutely incredible. And, you think you have a once in a lifetime experience, and then it happens a second time, then it happens a third time. And, I don't always really necessarily know how to process that, but I certainly do ingest it. And we finally got past all of that giddy stuff. And it was like, Andy said, okay, I guess we got to go to work now. So I said, yeah, please. Because it was like the attention was just almost too much for me. It was almost too much for me. And then
The Rock was very friendly with you. Very nice.
Oh God. The Rock is, and I say this frequently as well, he is everything that you think he would be. Everything you see him on camera, in interviews, in even all of his social media, he's that person. He's
seems
just
like
that
very
person.
nice, very,
and I don't. It's
person.
like he's one of those mega stars that I'm blown away at how truly kind and generous he is, and he includes everyone. I mean, he just, you just feel like you're his friend from the minute you meet him, and that doesn't change. It just doesn't change. It's really incredible. He's an amazing person. It was a massive honor to spend a week with him. I mean, really was.
That's great. I mean, again, I know you've mentioned all these things so many times, and we saved this for now, but I thank you for doing this again, because I've been wanting to ask these things forever. And there's so much more in the memoir, again, that people that you tell a lot of these behind the scenes things that people will love reading. But this was just so much fun to get to, and I hope you had fun talking about this stuff.
I always do, and thank you. And I'm glad we decided to do this, because this is a blast, especially for us. It's like fun to be a guest on our own show.
Right.
And I know this is going to be a long one, but I hope people have enjoyed it.
You know what? This is people who love Witchbound. And you know what? I think I mentioned to you the first time I did it. I used to do a lot for Mixed Up Files, because I interview a lot of authors. And I always ask them one question: what was your favorite movie as a kid? Mm-hmm. And it's always tied. It's one of two movies. It's always, people say either The Goonies or Escape to Witch Mountain. Those are the two that always come back the most as their favorite childhood movies. So, and that, for me, I get it. I totally get it. And, I have a special place in my heart for Witch Mountain, because I remember seeing it as a kid. It was one of the first things that I got to see in the theater, and seeing it in the theater is very different than going in and seeing it at home. It's a magical experience that your parents are taking you to something,
Oh, I completely agree. When it's been a few years now, but I got to see it in the theater again after ever having watched it in a little video screen on my computer endless times. One of the theater chains out here was having like Disney matinee and playing classic Disney movies. And one weekend, they decided to screen Witch Mountain. It was obviously a digital screening, which didn't matter.
No,
but my wife Tia and I decided, well, we're going to go. I mean, I got to see it in the theater again, and I thought, what's this going to be like? And it was like, it just all washed over me again, almost like feeling like for the first time, because suddenly seeing the images up the size they're supposed to be and the way you're intended to experience it really makes a huge difference in how you experience movies. And so, I completely understand. I get it. Even I get it, having been so, personally involved in it. So that it was awesome.
And I'm going to say something that you don't know that I'm going to say, and you could edit this out if you want. Totally. Here we go. Having said all this, you and I have discussed this in other shows. Disney needs to do better in bringing their stars into the family permanently. I mean, not that you need it, and I know Kim doesn't need it, but that's not the point. The point is, your film was one of the bright spots during a time when they didn't have a lot of bright spots. And that needs to be taken into account. Their movies weren't universally loved at that time, and yours was. That should mean something to them now. And they need to do better by their alumni. And I've said this many shows, and I'm going to keep saying it, because they need to do better by not just you, and not just because we're doing the show, but they have to bring their all-stars back into the fold, and in some capacity. That's my opinion. And I've said, it's my soapbox here on this show. So.
Well, if somehow that gets orchestrated, I certainly won't say no to it, whatever that means and however that could manifest itself. But no, I appreciate that. You're a huge champion of that idea, and I very much appreciate it. So,
but again, let's we'll see. I'm going to keep pushing it, but again, Ike, thanks for doing this, and thanks for talking about the memories. I love hearing it. So it's always I can talk about Witch Mountain all the time.
And there is so much more, so we may do another episode about it. But I had a great time. I love talking about it, and I do post a lot of fun stuff on my social media, which I do.
And you're on Twitter now. Let's get that out there.
I am. I'm on Twitter. You can find me at IKE_EISENMANN. same thing on Instagram, and also I'm on Facebook if you want to check that out. But yeah, Twitter's new to me. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's a brand new kind of thing, and seems like a lot more opportunity to engage with people. So
well, if you missed Ike's stuff Ike's been on Instagram a while, and he's now doing all the same things that he did on Instagram, releasing a lot of classic Disney, photographs of his career. So definitely follow on Twitter. And by the way, if you want, I'm House of Rosen, at House of Rosen on both, on Instagram and Twitter. And, again, thanks for doing this. Thank you all for watching. Let us know in your comments, what are some of your favorite Witch Mountain memories, and what else you would like to hear us talk about. But this was our first show for the new year, and I'm happy. I think it was a good topic. And again, Happy New Year to everyone. This has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And remember, subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.